The Straight Lines. I'm Tim Neiman. This is where life lessons meet leadership, where business gets a front row seat, and where you will get a blueprint for success. Whether you are managing a team, building a brand, or just trying to lead yourself better, you're in the right place. Because here on Straight Lines, we believe the shortest distance between purpose and progress is truth, clarity, and action. Brought to you in part by the Baseball Blue Book, has been the game's trusted directory since 1909. And now it's where businesses connect directly with players, parents, and coaches. Create a profile, promote your services, and join the community. If your business wants to stand out, it's time to get in the book. Download Baseball Blue Book today from Apple or Google Play. I am stoked today to have a really special young man, not so young anymore. You're not my vintage,
not.
But yeah, but you're getting there. Known him for quite some time from our Reading Phillies days. I refuse to call them the Fighting Phils or whatever they are. I like the Reading Phillies. That was probably a decade ago at least, and just doing a great job now. Currently with MLB Network and doing a heck of a job. We'll get into some of those things as we work along here. January 1st, 2009, the MLB Network was launched with their Hot Stove and Baseball Tonight, right? The
MLB Tonight, yeah, still the flagship show.
Yeah. So really welcome here is to Greg Caserta, again with the MLB Network. Thank you for coming on, my friend. I really appreciate your time.
Nimes, you bet, man. I've been looking forward to this for a little while. We talked about this probably over the summer towards the end of the season. And once we had the date nailed down, I know I had to push it back a day on you, but here we are. And it's always good to see you.
Yeah, we'll have a blast. We always do. And I want to, we'll get into the MLB here. Obviously, between Reading, tell me what happened between Reading and the MLB Network. Was there a stop or two in between? Just give me a sense of what that was like.
Yeah, so you and I, we overlapped in Reading from 2017 to 2019. I was there for 3 seasons. My plan was to come back in 2020 as the broadcast and media relations manager. I would, handle all of that, doing all the home games and then doing half the road games with whoever my partner would have been. And I was told, obviously 2020 was wiped out because of COVID. 2021, I usually touch base with the GM in Reading like 2 months before opening day, just to say, hey, I'll be back down. I'll get there a month before the season starts, and I'll start all my preseason prep that I do in preparation for opening day. And it was at that time when he told me that because of COVID and some of the restrictions, whether it be budget or anything else, they had eliminated my position. And from there now you see them, at least I know that they don't travel their broadcaster anymore. A lot of teams do this. This is the business of minor league baseball. You see it in the major leagues, Nimes. The Blue Jays, up until the World Series and the playoffs, their radio broadcasters do not travel. The Anaheim Angels radio broadcasters do not travel. So it's not just a minor league thing. It's something that even has filtered in to the majors. So in 2021, I really didn't know what the future held. I honestly thought I was on my last legs. There were points that year when I was applying to business schools thinking that, all right, maybe I'll look to go get my MBA and chart a new path because I had no backup. I put all my eggs into this basket of becoming a broadcaster. I had reached a level that was just below, to me, what I thought was making it. And I truly felt I was right on the cusp of breaking out. And fortunately, one of your previous guests, one of your former players, Jeff Hurley, GM of the Trenton Thunder, gave me the lifeline that I needed. I had reached out to him. I had heard through mutual friends that they had potentially been looking for a broadcaster for 2021. Or was it 22 at this point? 21. So 2021. And he got back to me and he said, listen, we have an offer out to the guy that would have been here in the COVID year. There's a chance that he doesn't take it. He lives up in the New England area. He might want to stay up that way if he gets work that way. If he refuses the job, if he doesn't take it, it's yours. And so I waited around for probably 10 to 14 days. I'll never forget, I was in the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. I had just gotten my coffee, and it was probably this time of year. It was in the wintertime. And I got a call from Jeff, and I figured, all right, this is it. Like, this is a 50-50, whether my career continues or whether maybe that's the beginning of the end. Like, that's the start of the funeral march. And he called to say, hey, great news. The guy that we had the offer to is staying put up in the New England area, and the job is yours. And oh, by the way, because of all the things happening with COVID, if you remember, the Toronto Blue Jays were not playing in Toronto at that point.
That's right.
They were playing in Buffalo, where their AAA affiliate is.
Yeah.
So the Buffalo Bisons were basically transplanted from their home. They had no place to play, and they ended up spending the first 3.5 months of the 2021 season playing their home games in Trenton, New Jersey. So not only did I back into a job at the last minute, first time I had ever gotten a job in my home state of New Jersey after many years of traveling all over the place. But Jeff also said, congratulations, you're also going to be doing AAA baseball.
Wow.
So 2 years in Trenton, and ultimately from working at the radio station in New York, WFAN, where I was an update anchor for parts of 5 years. They held the Yankees and the Mets broadcast packages. A friend of mine was the Mets executive producer on the radio side. He had been trying for years to get me a Mets pre- and post-game job, an opportunity just to fill in for a series and do pre and post, get it on a demo reel, and hopefully send it out in the hopes that, again, you ascend through the minors like I did. Hopefully a team brings you on to become their pre- and post-game host. And when he reached out with the opportunity, it was actually to call 2 Mets games. It was not to do pre and post. And so I did those 2 games remotely. Again, teams were not traveling their broadcasters during COVID. Right. So I drove out to Citi Field. I went to an empty, dark ballpark. They played 2 games late on a weekend in San Diego. I called those games off the monitors inside the Mets home radio booth. And a friend of mine who at the time was working for MLB Network, is my boss now. He heard those games, being a Mets fan. He's somebody that I kept in touch with throughout the years on the minor league side, was constantly trying to break the door down at MLB. And he just kept saying, hey, keep getting the reps, keep getting the reps. He heard me do those Mets games, and suddenly he started taking me a little bit more seriously because he knew I had kind of reached that next level. So the combination of Jeff Hurley and Ray Martell, the current Mets executive producer on the radio, those 2 guys saved my career, and it's why I am where I am now.
That's amazing. That's it's a great story. And, I could have saved those guys lots. And I know Jeff obviously really well. I don't know Ray, but I could have saved a lot of time by vouching for you from the Reading days. I thought you were outstanding. I always loved talking to you, spending time with you. I thought you're very professional, great voice, and you know the game too, which doesn't hurt a little bit. That's for sure. Is there any moment? I mean, this is straight lines, and it's a pretty good concept. A lot of folks like it. Anything that happened that on MLB or really anywhere that went different? We kind of just talked about a lot of that went differently than you had planned, and how would you adjust to that?
So I think I'm still getting that. I don't think that ever really stops, right? That's life, where things do not go as planned. And I'll give you the example, right? So like I kind of touched on it before. When I started doing minor league baseball on the radio, that was 2011. And, that feels like an eternity now. That's 14 years ago. Yeah. Obviously, the business has changed tremendously. The broadcasting business has changed. And it's something that I'm sure you and I will get into with podcasting and how everybody now has a podcast and a voice in this realm. So
I'm not kidding,
you're not kidding. So I really thought the progression was like, I would tell people, I'm like the players and I'm like the coaches. Hopefully you just keep working your way up, and eventually a major league team gives you an opportunity to be their pre and post game guy. To segue from doing radio and then jumping into television was not something I expected. And it's something that I'm still learning now, where, listen, from doing both, when you're on the radio, you're the guy. You're a one-man show, and you got to carry all the weight and do it on your own. TV is so much more of a team effort, where everybody's got to be pulling their weight in the right direction. So for me, when I started at MLB Network, that was the time they were launching MLB Big Inning to make it what it is now. The timing there was certainly in my favor. I only started hosting MLB Tonight at the end of 2025. So at this point, I've only done, let's say, a dozen of those shows. And there was definitely an adjustment, going from sitting in a radio booth, calling a game, to really, you don't know who your audience is, to now sitting in front of cameras and lights and you're dressed up in a suit. Now you go from that to sitting at the big desk. And, beginning, I'm by myself. I'm doing that show solo where I'm basically talking to the audience. I learned it recently from doing MLB Tonight, whether it be Cliff Floyd sitting on my left and Dan Plesac further down. There's three of us, and it's not just about the audience. It's not just about talking into the camera. It's about talking to your partner and having that conversation so that it truly feels like you're just talking with your buddies at the bar or talking with your buddies in your basement. It's something that I've had to come to learn, and I think that the beauty is I'm never done learning. I always want to get better, and I think that it'll be year 4 for me at MLB Network in 2026. I really hit my stride in 2025, and I look at my career trajectory in terms of what I've done and how I've progressed. It's only gotten better each year. So that's the excitement for me, is just continuing to build off of what I've done and hopefully bring it to that next level each time.
I think you're sensational. I really do. And you know me, if you weren't any good, I probably would tell you.
That's true too.
and you probably wouldn't be here. But I think you're really, really, really good. And I really enjoy my, broadcasting and just dumb luck, with Reading and, the local cable company, and now doing some Iron Pigs games, did about 30 of them. And you're right, having a good partner and having some kind of a banter. All right, the game's 12-2. You got to have something. I got to keep you. All right, let's talk steroids. Does Pete Rose go in Hall of Fame?
Sure.
Those kinds of things to keep the audience. And whether you've got your play-by-play guy, Steve, it's amazing Degler, and then also, sideline person. It's just the flow of a show. It's a show. And, the game is what what makes it work. It's straight line. So you got to always adjust. You've got to, how quick can you change the tire? I can tell you, I'm the most nervous when we shoot the open. It's a stupid 3-minute open, right? And we're taping the damn thing. And I'm ready to, I'm like, I don't want to mess it up. Then the game starts and I talk about the game. That's pretty easy.
So right? You and I are simpatico when it comes to that, because even to this day, if I do 10 games a year for MLB Network, the one thing that I stress over and the one thing that I'm thinking about is making sure that you nail that open. And, again, it sets the tone, right? Like when you have a good open and it's like, all right, maybe you get it done in one take, right? Because usually you film those things 30 minutes before first pitch. Correct, Sometimes if you're unlucky, you're doing it right up against first pitch, and that can be stressful. But when you nail that open, it's like, all right, let's go. And then once the game starts, Nimes, for me, I've done 1,000 games on the radio. Calling a baseball game is where I'm the most comfortable because I think it's my best skill set, and it's something that I've done. And I know as long as I'm prepared, there's nothing that I have to worry about. It's the same thing that I have done thousands of times.
Yeah. I never minded the live open. Like, all right, I'm going to do it. It's like the game started. It's part of the game. Game started, and we got kids in Reading, that stand to the as you come out of the press box to the right. There's kids jumping up and down. And like, all right, just high five them and include them and get them rolling. And it's a lot of fun. There's no doubt about it. And I think that comes through on the camera, to your audience, and you can't fake it. You can't.
Something that somebody told me, and I forget who it was, but somebody said, always broadcast with a smile, because people will obviously see it if you're on TV. But for me on the radio, they hear it. They hear that you're having fun. And to me, the guys that I enjoy listening to, the play-by-play guys that I enjoy, the one thing that they all have in common is that they always sound like they're having fun, and there's nowhere else that they would rather be. And I think that's something that all the guys that have made it to this unbelievable level in this business, that are not only successful, but by my estimation, one guy's opinion, really good at it. The one thing they all have in common, it might not necessarily be the look, the cadence, the voice. It's always that they're having fun. And that's something I always try and get across to whoever's watching our show.
I think that comes across on any of the shows in MLB. I can't pinpoint I watch a fair amount of it. I don't think I can think of there's anybody I wouldn't want to listen to or watch. And I think they do a really, really good job. Is there somebody that, beyond baseball and stuff, that just, I think there's a misconception, a misnomer of their average fan, the average person thinks, oh, I can't talk to that guy. I can never, walk up and shake his hand and say hello. And there's probably guys like that.
Sure.
But vast majority of them are just like, they're just regular guys like you and me. But is there anybody out there like that stands out to you? Like, all right, this guy gets it. I mean, he understands people, he understands he's, service. He's doing a service here. He's not the guy. He's not the show. The people are the show and the game's the show. Anybody sticks out to you that, you really like resonate to?
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate because the guys that we have at MLB Network are good dudes. From now doing, let's say, a dozen MLB Tonights, I've been able to work shows with different people. I've done a handful with Jake Peavy. I've done a handful with Steve Phillips. Guys that, listen, realistically, they don't have to do this. They do this because they want to and because they love it. My closest friend at MLB Network from an on-air perspective is Dan Plesac. Dan has become one of my very dear friends. He's become a golfing buddy. He's somebody that looked out for me when I started there. He's given me a lot of great advice. And he and I had dinner last week. And what I love about him, there's no ego there. And I think that's something that the people that I resonate with, the people that I have a bond with are people that don't take themselves seriously. Like, I think you're always supposed to take your work seriously. I think you're a fool if you don't do that. Doesn't matter if you're a broadcaster, if you're a coach, if you're like my dad, who was a dentist for 40 years. You take your work seriously and you take pride in that work, but never take yourself seriously, especially when this is the job. Talking baseball is a really fun thing. And I don't know if anybody that I know has grasped that idea better than Dan. I mean, Dan was an 18-year vet, a 3-time All-Star. He had an unbelievable career. And I've said, like, you're not going to meet anybody better than him. Just as a man, as a person, as a friend, he's as good as it gets. Sean Casey is another one. They call him the mayor for a reason. Sean comes in, you hear the classic phrase, lights up a room, and people gravitate towards him. He's that kind of guy. And I think for the most part, we've had that at MLB where we've got guys like that, guys that, you mentioned the network launching in 2009. There are guys that have been there since day one, and there's good reason for it. They're not just really good at what they do, but more importantly, and most importantly, they're really good people.
Yeah, it comes out, Greg, and you fit right in, my friend. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's very easygoing, informative, smiling, having fun. I think all those things stand out, to people that are watching and listening. And that's why you are on the cusp of even better things, I'm sure. There's no doubt about it. If you're enjoying Straight Lines and the conversations we're having, I would love to bring that same energy to your organization. I speak to teams, conferences, schools, and groups about leadership, resilience, and living a life that will cast a large shadow. If you're looking for someone who connects, encourages, and inspires you with real life stories that matter, I'm available for your keynote and special events. Please reach out to me at coachtimneiman.com. I'd be honored to serve your group. Visiting here with Greg Caserta, MLB Network. Can't tell him how proud I am of him. Like I said, we spent some time in Reading, and I know we had some conversations where maybe had to pull you back off the ledge a little once in a while, but
you definitely did.
Yeah,
you definitely did. Listen, that
you're so good.
2017 was a hard year for me. That was my first year there, and it was the first time that whatever mental demons that I had to use it and phrase it that way, they finally came to a head. Depression, anxiety, those were things that were always with me, but I could always shut them down when it was game time. Like an hour before first pitch was when, okay, whatever's going on, if I'm having a bad day, if I'm stressed or if I'm depressed, I can shut that off. And at least I know I've got those 3 hours to call the game. And then when the game's over, all right, now maybe I go back into reality and I got to figure out how I'm going to get through it. It finally got to a point in 2017 where that wasn't working anymore, where my mental health was not good. And it was just always worry and angst about the business, about making it, about, making sure that in my mind, I didn't let my family down, which I could never do. I could never do that. But in your head, you're thinking, if I don't, quote unquote, make it, I've let everybody down who supported me. So 2017 was a tough year for me. And I was able to finally get into therapy at the end of that season. And I think it ultimately saved my career and probably saved my life, because I don't know what would have happened had I not sought help. And I think that, you're seeing more people be outspoken about it. And I think that's a great thing, especially when athletes use that platform to talk about mental health and mental health advocacy. I think that's a great thing, because it definitely allowed me to get to where I am.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to talk about it. I'm more proud of you for even bringing that up. And look where you are now. I don't think there's any scenario that can't be overcome, but you need that good support. Sometimes you just need somebody to listen to. That's all.
Oh,
You know,
100%,
and then just
100%.
talk.
It goes a long
Mhm.
way, and it's not, it's funny. Like I'll talk with coworkers sometimes at the end of a long shift, and sometimes it's just somebody that needs to vent. And I tell
Yeah,
people that I said, listen, if you ever
yeah,
need to vent,
yeah,
I'm here. I'll always
yeah,
listen. I'll try and throw some advice in where I can. But yeah, when people listen and you're able to just get things off your chest, I think that's a great thing.
yeah, it is.
Because again, you can't do it alone. You need to have, not just your family, but you need friends to help you get through. And I think that's where TV is so great, is again, it's that teamwork aspect of everybody's got to be doing their job in order for it to all work.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You've talked about the changes in coverage and TV, especially. What sticks out to you over the last 5 years, 10 years? What's different? What good and bad, perhaps? What helps you do your job better, and what could you maybe do without?
Two things, Tim, that I think have stood out to me, and not even talking about the business, because I think the business is constantly changing. I think it's gotten way more competitive, even from when I first started expressing interest in it. I went to college. My freshman year was 2006. I went to Fordham University, and the whole reason I went there was to work at the radio station, because I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting. And here we are, almost 20 years later from when I started my freshman year of college, and you're seeing it. It's ultra competitive. You're seeing younger people get their big breaks early on. What I've noticed, at least, looking at it, and I'm sure if you asked me down the road, I could give you a different answer, but I look at traditional TV watching is not what it was. Obviously, streaming has become way more of a thing, and I'm guilty of it. Listen, I would love to have cable in my house, but what it costs, and then adding in all the apps that you throw in at the end, you're spending an arm and a leg to have television in your house. So
Yeah.
it's not like the old days where, all right, MLB Tonight, the national pregame show, airs from 5 to 7, Monday through Friday. It's not like it's appointment TV anymore. People don't need to race home and sit in front of their televisions. You've got your phones, you've got your tablets. So listen, streaming's a good thing for us. MLB.TV, our streaming app, is an unbelievable resource. So I'm able to watch whatever I need on days off. If I'm in the kitchen cooking, I can throw it on my phone. I'm chopping onions, and there's MLB Tonight on my phone right in front of me. So I think that's part of it, is that, TV ratings, that whole game has changed immensely. And then the other thing is what we talked about before, is everybody has a podcast, and that's okay, right? Like, we have the technology to make it work. I'm doing a hit with you right now without a microphone. I'm doing it with just a laptop in front of me. You have a nicer setup at your house, but it's very basic. You don't need a lot. Everybody has this gift of speech. Everybody can talk, everybody can listen, everybody can ask questions. That doesn't mean that everybody's a good broadcaster.
Right.
And I think what happened was people just got the sense like, hey, I have a microphone and I can hit record. Just because you had a major league career doesn't mean you're a good broadcaster.
No.
So, there are times when somebody will send me a clip and it's like, hey, you got to listen to this podcast. And it's just like, nah, it's not my style. I think that's part of it, is the landscape is littered with a lot of stuff, and there's some good stuff out there. But because of that, I think it just gets very watered down, which is one of the reasons probably why I never launched my own podcast. I just was afraid of getting lost in the shuffle. And that's not to say that I don't do something at some point down the road, but it's a very hard medium to break into, especially right now. I mean, podcasting is, as you know, it's a monster, and you got to be good at it. Like, just because you pitched in the major leagues for 10 years and you look good on camera doesn't mean you're a good broadcaster. So
No.
I think you got to filter some of the stuff out of that realm, and just, find stuff that you enjoy and be a fan of it.
Yes, I think people's attention span, excuse me, it's a lot shorter. And I
Oh
think it
yeah.
always was. it's a lot shorter. So, I think the beauty of people that hopefully know what they're doing, and hopefully I'm one of those, you're able to cut out those little clips and send them. Now, I think that works pretty darn well. And I'm still a little bit of a neophyte, I guess, but
Yeah.
hit the ground running and things are going very well in the top 5% in Apple's rankings for management, and leadership, which is what I want to do. I think that's really good. So I think the message
Tim,
is
going
good.
off that, it's why Big Inning works as a show.
Mm.
We took the NFL Red Zone concept and we just made it our own. The only difference is we do it 160 nights out of the year instead of 18 Sundays.
Yeah.
But when they told me about this show, when they brought me on and they said, listen, we're trying to make this a little bit bigger part of what we do, we think that would be a good starting point for you. They had me and Matt Yaloff be the hosts on it. Matt's the lead guy. I'm his backup. We split up the week, whether it be he does 5 days and I do 2, or he does 4 and I do 3. That's quote unquote our show. When they pitched me on that show, I didn't think it would work. I didn't think having 4 baseball games on the screen at once, the way Red Zone is framed, like as an old school baseball fan, a guy that grew up just watching games, I never thought it would work. And then I finally started doing it and I went, oh, this will 100% work.
Yeah.
And I think, the numbers back that up. The ratings back that up. Obviously, there's a very big gambling element to that. Obviously, with the rise of that, that's another thing that's changed with how sports are consumed, is how prevalent gambling is. But it's made our show something that I think a lot of people enjoy. And it's because of that shorter attention span. People want to see that big moment. They want to see Judge. They want to see Vladdy. They want to see Ohtani. Some people don't want to sit and watch a 3-hour baseball game. And I get that. There are times when I don't want to sit and watch a 3-hour baseball game. And that's my business. So, I think, on the flip side, I know I was kind of railing on the podcast environment, but at the same time, that shorter attention span has allowed a show like Big Inning to survive and thrive.
Yeah, I agree. Quick question though. Do you cry when you cut onions?
Yeah. I mean, what I've found actually is that shallots make it worse. Shallots are actually harsher than onions.
And do you have a go-to dish? A go-to dish.
So listen, as an Italian from Bergen County, New Jersey,
pasta.
Of course, I never did the ancestry DNA, but by my count, I'm 100% Italian. I would put my different pasta dishes up against anybody. That's something that I enjoy doing. And in my tiny kitchen here in the condo, I have just enough room to get it done.
That's awesome. I figured, I was just curious. That's all. Hey, is there anything in baseball now, a storyline that maybe is not talked enough about, or not getting the attention, whether it's nationally or, just coming off the winter meetings, a lot of stuff going on. Used to be a time in winter meetings where, boom, it all happened. Everything happened. Not so much anymore. It's kind of more of a, lining the field, setting the table for the rest of the next 6 weeks. But anything you think should be perhaps covered more? Maybe it's, the gambling aspect, or I don't know, whatever would pop into your mind in that regard.
Well, I think that obviously people look at 2027 with a lockout looming as a big moment, and that's something that I think if you work in this industry, it's on your mind at different points. Now, like I look at it and say, listen, I can't worry about 2027. I need to worry about tomorrow. I need to worry about being good with the next time I have a show. I need to have a good 2026. But yeah, the looming lockout, it worries me because I'm a fan of the product. It's something that I love. It's not just my livelihood. It's something I love. And I feel like that we've made a lot of progress in the last 5 years since the last CBA was agreed to. The introduction of the pitch clock, I think, changed this game for the best. I'm not a huge fan of the ghost runner, but I'm also not a fan of 4.5-hour games during the regular season. So I understand that aspect of it. But my hope is that when the sides come to the negotiating table, that they're able to come to a resolution, because the offseason for me is rough. Like, I don't like the offseason. When the World Series ends, I'm already counting the days till spring training. That's just how I am. So for me, the thought of losing baseball beyond a traditional offseason, that's something that, I think it worries anybody that's connected to this. But I also think there's a lot of time before we get to that point for conversations to be had and for both sides to come to an understanding.
Yeah, I'm at I hope so too. I'm worried about it. I think as many baseball people are, but
Sure.
the ghost runner just, and I don't know. Here's my thought. And the fact that this baseball purist, traditionalist even has this thought, luckily I'm protected. I don't, then it's the season, I won't get a lightning bolt entering my office here, but look, we want to make the game shorter. We want to try to get it over. We're also more worried about the pitching, right? This pitching management conservation. So I propose this instead of the ghost runner, which is not baseball. It's just not. Play 12 innings, and we're going to play 3 extra innings. If the game is still tied, it's a tie.
Okay.
There's 162 games, 162. They do it in hockey. I don't know if people would get all that worked up about it. I really don't. And let's face it, how many people are still in the ballpark, perhaps? I don't know. But if they knew it ahead of time, so I have a defined, finite area for pitching. I know what's going to happen. Not going to go past 12. And the game's still more sacred that way to me than putting a guy on second base. It's like, why don't you just play home run derby?
Sure.
I have a hard time with the outcomes of those kinds of games. Talking to Greg Caserta.
I'll give you an example real quick, Tim. Like a couple of weeks ago, I'm doing MLB Tonight, and the off-season shows are different, right? Because if you're doing a show during the regular season, you've got games to talk about. There's things that happen the night before that you can get into leading into first pitch in the following game. You can show those games and talk over them on MLB Tonight. The off-season, you really got to do your homework, where you're really digging in on storylines and you're really coming up with segments that'll flow over the course of a 1 hour or 2 hour show. So a couple of weeks ago, one of our segments was, classic. It's not a cliche, but a classic. What's your bold prediction for 2026? And I never brought this to the air, but I kind of threw this out there. To me, and we see this all with the playoffs. You see this more and more every year. Guys coming in, normally starters, that are now coming in to pitch in relief. Guys like Blake Snell that have never worked in relief are now coming in to pitch high leverage spots late in a ball game. We saw it with Yamamoto, obviously. That was one of the greatest things we've ever seen. That's something that I don't think gets talked about enough. What Yamamoto did in the World Series is, I don't think you could talk about that enough. But what I kind of proposed was I could see, and I think it got shut down pretty quickly by some of the people that I work with, why not in August and September down the stretch, instead of having your guys throw their side sessions, have them throw an inning of relief in a real game. Right? Because Blake Snell, up until the playoffs, all he knows is starting. He works every 5 days. He's got his routine. He goes out, he throws his 5 or 6 innings or 100 pitches or whatever the case may be. Obviously, these guys are major leaguers. They're able to come out of the bullpen and pitch in spots like that. But to me, to ramp them up better for the playoffs, instead of using their side session as just a day to work in the bullpen and throw, have them come in and throw an inning. Have them come in and throw 15 pitches or face 3 batters. I don't think that'll ever happen, but it's something that I'd be curious about to ramp guys up for when they do get into the playoffs. You have a guy that's generally a starter now working both roles, kind of a swingman guy.
Yeah, that happens in college baseball from time to time because you don't have the quality of depth, which showed its head in the World Series. We're going to use our 4 top starters in the game clinching, the outcome. I mean, that was the outcome. So I don't know that you would ever see that at all. I don't know, but run the 12-inning tie past a few of your dudes. And if they're going to shoot ballistic missiles at my house, just give me a heads up so I can at least go to the neighbors or something.
I was going to say, I'll give you the heads up that way you could duck out and go to Florida for a few days.
Yeah, that would be good. Hey, we're visiting with Greg Caserta, having a great time at MLB Network. Even we talked about how important it is to be a team when you're doing broadcasting, and team killers in every workplace and every team. There are unforeseen forces that can derail success. In my book, Team Killers, I uncover the behaviors, attitudes, and habits that destroy chemistry and show you how to build a winning culture instead. If you're a leader, coach, or teammate who wants lasting success, this book is your playbook. Get your copy of Team Killers today and protect your team from the inside out. Again, back with Greg Caserta, having a blast here today. What advice then would you give to young guys? You talked about your plight and your journey.
Yep.
there's a guy that went to Fordham now. Maybe he's a senior, and this is what I want to do. What are you telling him?
Well, I'm in this situation now where I am getting these emails and these messages from kids online on Twitter and Instagram. Hi, Mr. Caserta. I'm a senior at East Stroudsburg University, wherever the case may be.
Go.
And I remember being that guy not that long ago, sending those emails out. And so it's humbling. But what I tell all of them, I would never tell anybody not to go for it. I would never tell anybody to abandon their dream, because I didn't have people in my life that told me that. It was obviously a dream of mine to do this, but I had very supportive people in my life and in my corner that said, no, you go for it. We believe in you. And if there ever comes a point where we don't think you can, that's when we'll sit you down and say, all right, maybe it's time we do something else. But what I tell them is, I said, listen, you need to be tough. You need to be mentally tough. And you have to know that even when you think you are tough, you got to be tougher than that. Because it can be very humbling. It can be something that really hurts you. You send 100 emails, you only get one response. That's deflating. That's something that's like the numbers are not in your favor in that regard. But what I do tell them is just go into it and be mentally tough. And if that's your starting point, you've got a shot. And the other thing I tell them is to not pay attention to what everybody else is doing. There is a reason why if I get follows, and these are people that I'm friends with. There are people that I'm friends with in the business that we follow each other on social media, but I have them muted because I don't want to know what it is they're up to. And in the case of young guys, it's okay. I'm 25 years old. Here's this kid that just won the Jim Nantz Award that they give to the best college sports broadcaster. And all of a sudden, this guy's calling a Big Ten game on Saturday night at like 23 years old. I'm 25. I think I'm just as good as that guy. Why aren't I doing that? And that becomes this vicious cycle. And what I remind kids is that most people in this business, it takes the 10 plus years or the 10,000 hours, whatever you want to call it, to make it. The guys that break very early on, it's happening more and more now, but they are also the minority. And I think that that's something that as long as you worry about yourself and you take care of your own business, just block out the noise of everybody else, because you'll drive yourself crazy and you'll never be happy that way.
It's sensational. I tell young coaches, that guys that want to coach and get in the game, tell them almost the exact same thing. You really have to support who you're working for. Number one, you've got to hang in there and be tough and expect, I always told my two boys, and they're both in the game, it's probably going to take you 10 to 12 years, and maybe like early 30s where, okay, well, maybe this isn't working. I've got to adjust. And I think it's exactly the same in a lot of things that, give opportunities to have a voice, if you will. And then there's a voice in coaching, there's a voice in broadcasting. And I think that's really great advice. And it feels good though, doesn't it? People come to you and say, hey, coach, hey, Greg, what can I do? I think it's awesome.
You know why I like it? I'll tell you why, Tim, because I was fortunate that there were guys that I knew from Fordham that I developed relationships with. I would reach out to Ian Eagle or Mike Breen, and I would ask them for advice. Or in some cases, if I was going for a big job where I knew they could help, they would put a word in. They'd send a note to somebody that was part of that hiring process. And I always felt bad being on the end of those phone calls, because I always said to those guys, I said, I always feel bad because I can't offer you anything. And that's what I said to them. I said, listen, I always feel bad making these calls because there's nothing that I can do for you. And those two guys in particular, and there's multiple guys that have said this to me, but those two guys stand out because they are truly two of the biggest names in sports broadcasting. Ian Eagle, Mike Breen. They said, you don't need to do anything for us, but look out for the guys behind you, because eventually you're going to be on the receiving end of these phone calls. As long as you pay it forward, that's all you got to do. And as long as that cycle continues, that's what it's all about. Straight lines, connecting lines, relationships. That's how I can give back, is, to help out guys behind me where I can. Obviously, I still have a career that I need to look out for, and I need to worry about my next thing and making sure that the contract is signed. But yeah, I'll always lend an ear. Even if I don't know somebody, I'll take a phone call because I don't want guys to go through the dark days that I did. I would not wish that on anybody. Those feelings of doubt and insecurity, feeling like a failure, if I can prevent one person from feeling that way because of advice that I gave them, then I'm very happy knowing that I did that.
There's absolutely some golden nuggets so far in this podcast for sure. And that's what this is about, to try to help people. And, I think people get into situations and they think, man, this is unique to me. You get a health situation, it's like unique, I'm down and out and nothing, woe is me. And that's all natural. And we all go through those things, but it's not unique to you. And there's other people like that. But the difference can be people, what you're surrounding. Like you always surround yourself with great people, right?
Yeah.
I surround myself as a coach doing this, surround myself with people that make me look good, but that's part of it too. And if I'm having a down day or whatever, I know there's people you can lean on. What mistake, Greg, would you say that the young broadcasters make as they enter into the profession? There's something that stands out, kind of a common denominator?
It's not being yourself. It's learning to find your voice, because I go back and I'll occasionally stumble across an old clip, something that I did from 2014 or 2016, going back 9-10 years. And I don't recognize that person in terms of how they sound. It's still me. It's me, but I'm trying to do a poor imitation of somebody that I like. Part of that is because, there are times when you're not comfortable in your own skin. You don't like the person that you are, so you try and be somebody else. The other thing is you look at it and you say, all right, I'm a 27-year-old guy, but man, that guy sounds really good. How old's Brad Nessler? Brad Nessler's in his 60s. When I call college football, I want to sound like Brad Nessler or Brent Musburger. And now you're just doing a poor imitation of those guys. Again, when you finally find your voice and you find what works, there's almost this peaceful element to it where it's like, now I can relax because now I'm not thinking, I'm just being me. And I've had that happen. It happens at different points in your career. There are these mile markers where this clicks. And then another time down the road, you go, yeah, it's even better than it was the last time I hit one of those mile markers. And I think part of that is just being you. I've heard so many guys say that. I'm not alone in this, is just be yourself. Because there's only one you, I think the thing that I pride myself on is that when I'm calling a game or I'm doing a show, you put it on and you know exactly who it is.
Yeah.
There are guys in the business that have very nice careers, but I listen to them and I go, he sounds like that guy. And that guy sounds like that guy. And it's like, you know what? I'm happy with what I'm doing because I'm just being me. And that was something that I think was drilled home to me by two guys that I'm currently working with. Greg Amsinger and Al Leiter both kind of described that to me, where they said, listen, Greg, especially when I first got there, he's the face of our network. Greg Amsinger hosts the national pregame show Monday through Friday. Him, Harold, and Dan, they're the stars of the show. Vasgersian, DeRosa, we have a lot of heavy hitters at our place.
Absolutely.
Greg welcomed me in year one and said, listen, my door's always open. If you ever need anything, just come on in. So I had reached out to him, and I was thinking about this today because I knew we would be talking. I did a hit at the desk. It was one of my first hits at the desk where I felt like, wow, I crushed that. That was really good. And now looking back, man, it's way better 2 years later today than it was then. So I go in, I pull up the clip on my phone. I had it downloaded. I show it to Greg, and he's just sitting at his desk and like this, he's watching my phone. And then he gets done and we talk, and he gives me these pointers. And basically what he told me, he's like, listen, walk around here and act like you belong here because you're one of us. He goes, the guy that took over for Derek Jeter in New York, I'm sure it took him some time to figure it out, but eventually Didi Gregorius became Didi Gregorius. Yeah. He goes, act like when people turn on the television, they're there to watch you. Right? You're the guy from North Jersey. You're the Italian kid that's sitting at the end of the bar, talking smack with his friends. You're the regular guy. People want to hear from a guy like you. So just be you. Be that guy. And Al Leiter said it to me about 6 weeks ago. We did MLB Tonight together, and I could still feel in the early going of doing that show, I was being very stiff, and I'm trying to stick to the rundown, and I'm trying to adhere to all these points, making sure that we're on schedule, making sure that it's flowing well. Al came to me after the show. He's like, listen, loosen up. He goes, you like to dance? I go, yeah, I like to dance. You like to drink at parties? Yeah. He goes, all right. So when you get in the studio, man, he starts going like this. He's like, just loosen up. And now it was something that I focused on the subsequent shows that I did where it's like, dude, just let it rip. And as you
Yeah.
know, Tim, it doesn't matter if you're swinging a golf club, if you're talking into a microphone, when you're not thinking, that's when you're at your best. You just let it
Yeah.
flow. What I like to call passing the ball without looking.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And again, credit to those two guys in particular for, again, allowing me to learn from them and to grow, because you never stop. It doesn't matter how good you get. If you have it figured out at, let's say, my age, 37, what's the point of still doing it?
Yeah.
You're always chasing down that perfect broadcast. You're always trying to be better the next day than you were today. So that's part of it, is you're always chasing that dragon.
I'm transitioning out of coaching, as you know, and I started doing the Reading games probably late 2000, somewhere in there. And I would always go back and watch them, and what can I do better? What am I saying all the time that I shouldn't say?
Yep.
And right now with the Pigs, I do a little bit of the same thing, but I always watch the opens, and even in fact, I'll do it and listen to it, as it's being shown to the audience, the TV audience, and then I'll text my wife and say, yeah, that was an A+ open today, because you get to know what it should look like.
Let me ask you something. Maybe you go through this too. I've always found this, and again, I relate to stand-up comedy and I relate to stand-up comics because I find them fascinating, and I think the career trajectory is very similar. You hear about guys that have to do open mics, and then they're opening at different clubs for 10 years, and now finally you become a headliner. So I kind of look at that with my own career, and I think, like, all right, let me go back and watch something that I thought was really good, and I'll watch it. And this happens to this day. It's not from even 10 years ago when I was still finding my way. It's even now where I'll go and I'll watch something and I'll go, man, that was really good. And then I'll put it down, and then I'll go back to it and I'll watch it again. And I go, that sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I have found. I've heard comics say that they'll record specials, and then when they go into the editing bay to edit the special, they're like, nobody's going to like this. None of this is funny. And I think that's just part of, if you want to call it being an artist or a performer, you're a little screwed up mentally, right? Like, we're all a little deranged to want to do this. And I think we're all damaged in our own way, but that's something that I still struggle with, where I think, man, I knocked it out of the park last night. I had a great show. And you just fluctuate with, you watch it and you go, that was great. And then the next time you go, that stunk. And I think that's just something that you just have to believe your gut and know that it's good and listen with a constructive ear. Because I did this early on where I would go back and I would listen to games from the radio the night of. Like, if I had a couple of hours at my apartment, I'd open a case of beer and I'd listen to that night's game. And all I was doing was looking to poke holes in it. All I was doing was I was trying to take the red pen to it. And I realized that's not a productive way to be. So yeah, you should always be critical of yourself. You should always go back and try and improve, but do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you're trying to poke holes in everything that you did.
Yeah, you made like many good points. One I would suggest too is that you must always relish in the success. You must always be thankful for a success. I as a coach, coached in 1,400 games. You'd win 13-12, and I'm more pissed because we gave up 12 and didn't even resemble a baseball game, right? But we scored one more run than the other team, so I'm going to take it. And it took a while to learn that, and I think it's similar in other professions, certainly what you're doing. And I think you what, that was pretty good. I might be able to do a little bit more here and there, but again, going back to being yourself is pretty critical. Visiting with Gregg Caserta from the MLB Network, building his own legacy, if you will, when the game is over. What will people remember about you? My book, What is Your Legacy? Challenges leaders, athletes, and everyday people to think beyond the scoreboard. It's about purpose, impact, and the mark you leave on others. If you're ready to define your legacy and live it with intention, this book will guide the way. Get your copy of What is Your Legacy today and start shaping the story only you can tell. It's available at CoachTimNeiman.com. So,
you're a natural with the plugs, bro. You get them in. I love it.
I always tease Degler. We have a bunch of reads, as you know.
Yep.
With that, and I'm going to do the new car or whatever. It's like like a sentence, and even that, I'm like, I want to make sure. And I actually tried to ad lib it one day, and he's rolling his eyes at me. And of course, I screwed it up a little
Yeah,
bit.
way to go, hotshot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anyway, hey, I'm at Coach Neiman at Gmail. If you got
There you go.
it's based to having fun, absolutely. And you recover and you go from there.
Yep.
One of the directors like, hey, is there any read that's too long for you? I said, this is fine. This one sentence right now.
Keep it quick. I'll get us in and out. I'll land the plane. Don't worry about it.
Right. Let's have some fun here. Is there a moment in baseball history you would have liked to have broadcast? Anything that, wow, man, I wish I'd been in that guy, whether it was, Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world, Kirk Gibson's, crippled walk-off, if you will. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. Anything that, like, hey, this is my favorite moment. I would want to be, behind the mic calling this.
I thought of two I wanted to kind of have one from the way back that I was nowhere near a part of, and then one from recent times that I was not alive for. So the first one would have been Hank Aaron's record-breaking home run when he passed Ruth. I think that's a seminal moment in baseball, and not to take away from Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, but that's even way before that, right? So like for me, I don't relate to something from the 40s or the 50s, but Henry Aaron doing that and being able to watch that video still and hear Vin Scully's call, that's an amazing thing. And as time has gone on, I've grown to love Hank Aaron. I called 2 Hank Aaron invitationals for MLB Network. So I think having that slight bond and connection would be something that that's definitely moment number one. And then the next one is Game 6 of the '86 World Series. Ball getting through Buckner's legs. To be at Shea Stadium that night, I think would have been electric, because you watch things about those teams and you think about New York at that time when the Yankees were down. The Mets were a really cool team and a really fun team. So you go back and you watch how that whole inning played out. I mean, the Red Sox, you think about the Blue Jays being close this year. The Red Sox were really close. And to have that go away the way it did, those are the two for sure. Hank Aaron and the Buckner game, unfortunately for him.
Bob Stanley on the mound had that bad face, which baseball people talk about.
Oh, 100%. You could just see it.
Bad face. So it's Vince Scully and somebody else. There's 2 really good calls. Do you remember who the other person was?
So I'm trying to think. So obviously Scully is a little roller up along first, behind the bag.
Behind the bag.
All right, that was Vin. And then I'm trying to think if there was another one.
There was another one for sure.
Maybe Bob Murphy.
No, it was more of a national thing. I don't know if it was Costas or somebody like that. I don't know. We'll throw that out to the audience, and shoot me a text or an email, and we'll get the right answer to that. Yep. I shouldn't ask the question if I didn't know the answer, but that happens. So a lot of telecasts now, they're mic'd up, which I'm not a fan of by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm not either,
but it's the way it is right now. So if you had to mic somebody up for the entire game, would you have a guy?
It's a good question, because again, I'm like you. I don't like it. I don't think it really adds much. I think you're bothering those guys more than anything else. I'm trying to think of who. Well, listen, there's guys that I love to watch. I don't necessarily know if they'd be great to listen to.
Yeah.
Man, that's a good question. I'll tell you what, I'll throw this one out there for you. I would love to see or hear Prime Scherzer mic'd up during one of his starts.
Yeah.
I'd like that one. I'd love to hear him talking to himself, because we know he does that. He's a psychopath.
Yeah,
talking to his catcher, talking to his manager, what he says after a strikeout. Like, I'd love to see him up close and personal in his prime years. That would probably be a fun listen. That's
a good one. I'm more in the dugout. Like, I would love to have heard the late great Don Zimmer as a bench coach, that's my, I'm 67. I'm a little older than you, but still my dream. I want to be the bench coach for a big league club, and just kind of poke a hole or two through the analytics and the data, like in a 2021 World Series, and Blake Snell's mowing the Dodgers down, at the time for Tampa, and the book says take them out. And I'm Don Zimmer in the dugout. Skip, Kevin, let's do it's Sandy Koufax today. I would love to hear that guy read his book and stuff. I think it's very, very cool. If you had to have your own show on the MLB Network, you concocted your own idea, your own dream, what would that be?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Listen, I'm very fortunate that the shows that I'm doing are shows that I love for different reasons. I think Big Inning is perfect for me because it allows me to incorporate my play-by-play background into the show. And I think that's kind of what sets me apart is because I have that lengthy play-by-play background on the radio. We do players only broadcasts sometimes, where we show a game and we have guys talking over it. I've never done one of those, but that would be something I would love to do. Where you get me in a room and we're showing a live game and we're just talking over it. Me and guys that I'm buddies with, like a Yonder Alonso or a Jake Peavy or a Plesac or a Chris Young, being able to chop it up with those guys, like that would be great because I think that's ultimately what people like is, you're getting that, you're getting that little mix of Barstool Sports and guys just talking. It's not the traditional buttoned up play-by-play guy and color guy. So that would be something, to be able to host a players only broadcast at some point and be the point man on that would be really cool.
What's the best way for listeners, people that want to aspire for broadcast? What's the best way to follow you? Instagram, I would guess.
Yeah, Instagram now more than X. Twitter used to be the best. It really was, and it changed. I think just not being able to get your posts out to larger groups of people have hurt the brand. So I'm more on Instagram now, and it's my first and last name, Greg Caserta, 2 G's in Greg, 1 S in Caserta. It's Greg Caserta MLB for both Twitter and Instagram, or X and Instagram. The DMs are open. So if anybody wants to message me, I'll always answer as long as they're not hating my work and telling me how much I suck.
I don't think that'll happen. Man, you're a great follow on Twitter at the time, with used to put some really funny stuff on there that me knowing you and your personality, it's like, yeah, okay. You're like another one of my long lost sons or something.
You could be, because you know what it is? You could picture me saying it. You could picture the cadence and the sarcasm. It's how I write in my voice, I guess.
That's unreal. We're cut from the same cloth. There's no doubt. Right. All right. Last thing I ask everybody, what does the straight lines concept mean to Greg Caserta? And I don't know if you know the background and stuff, but it's kind of a metaphor for, keeping your line straight. I've had some health issues over the year, and I was that guy that wouldn't go get the test for one reason or other, because it's not going to happen to me. So that's not a straight line. So I go late and I'm having, surgery done a few months later because my lines personally were not straight, but they can be in, business, personal, professional, anyway, anything that, would stick out to you. And once we talk about this and it, you'll see them everywhere. My wife came home today with an example. She goes, she went somewhere and she made a phone call for some kind of a refund and they gave her some asinine answer. She goes, those are not straight lines, so you'll see them and realize them everywhere. Anything to you that would pop out for you, Greg?
Yeah, I think, one thing that stood out to me, I remember when my grandfather passed away a few years ago. He was a very successful tile man. Caserta Tile was a big deal back in the day in Brooklyn. And he had this business for a long time. He took it over from my great grandfather who came over from Italy. And when we were at his funeral, not one person talked about Bob Caserta, the tile man. It was Bob Caserta, the person. So I think, and I have a hard time with this, and I don't know if you do too, being a coach as long as you were, I still struggle with separating my life from my career, where I feel like I'm defined by how I am as a broadcaster. And in the end, that's not what people are going to remember you for. Your legacy is going to be how you treated people and how you were with your friends and family. And so that's kind of how those are the lines that I follow. And the other thing that is, I mentioned this before, is always give it your best. Like, it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. You always give it your honest effort because you owe it to the people. In my case, my mom, who's no longer with us, you owe it to them because they can't do it anymore. You do it for them. So that's something that shaped me over the last year plus since we lost her November of 2024. It's definitely changed my perspective on things. It's definitely allowed me to look inward more. And a lot of what I do for my mom because she can't do it anymore. So, she's kind of my guiding light. She's the one that kind of keeps me on the path, even though I'm still fortunate to have my dad with us and he is my guy. Like we're the same person. My mom has probably never been more impactful on my life. And she was the best when she was with us. Now that she's not with us, I think of her and I feel her more every day now than I did when she was still alive.
Outstanding. I am so proud of you, young man. And
Thank you,
are
bud.
you are making that legacy for yourself. And you're right. At the end of the day, what we're left is relationships and what we did for other people. For the most part, that's what they're going to remember you for. Thank you for joining me on Straight Lines, where leadership lessons meet the game of life. If you enjoyed today's show, share it with your friends and colleagues. Subscribe and connect with me on social media for more insights. And if you want to dive deeper, check out my 2 books, What is Your Legacy and Team Killers. Please visit CoachTimNeiman.com and check out our new YouTube channel at the Neiman Legacy Network. Until next time, lead with clarity, play with purpose, and keep those lines straight. Greg Caserta, thank you very much. They were outstanding, as I knew it would be. Best of luck to you, and we'll obviously stay in touch. And until we tune in to the MLB Network, the big show you're doing, I'm in. I'm all in. So thank you, buddy.
Thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure as always. And it's a relationship that goes back 8 years. So, you're still around. We still send each other texts here and there. And, you got a friend for life. That's for sure.
Thank you, buddy.